What's next for a neighborhood under siege? We'll have to wait and see. Reporting live, Sadie Sinclair, Channel 7 News.
This is San Francisco.
Welcome back to San Francisco. Kevin Jones from Doomloop Dispatch, another podcast here in town that examines some of the worst things about the Bay. He reached out and we recorded what you're about to hear, which is an episode that talks about the death of local traditional corporate media in the Bay and gives some more background on the perspective of this podcast as well. As Tofu wrote on the Patreon, we are trying to figure out how to make San Francisco a long-term project. So let us know if this kind of content around the more behind-the-scenes insidery stuff is interesting to you. And while you're at it, if you're there at patreon.com/San Francisco, you can help make sure the podcast continues by giving us a monthly tip. And you can listen to Doomloop Dispatch, Kevin's podcasts, on all the platforms.
Hello and welcome, Doomloopers. Thanks for joining another episode of the Doomloop Dispatch, the show about the worst things going on in the San Francisco Bay Area. Today, I have a very special guest. I honestly can say I probably wouldn't have started this show if it wasn't for this person. Quite the inspiration, setting down the foundation to go, hey, don't let what's happening, the local news narrative bring you down, start your own narrative. It's Toshio Meronek from the Sad Francisco podcast. One of my favorite shows going on right now. It's such an honor to have them on here. So thank you, Toshio.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, stoked to be on. And that's a huge compliment coming from you all. I just listened to your last episode on the Asiana crash snafu that happened at KTVU when you were there a few years ago. And I mean, for me, who's like such a nerd about media stuff and like behind the scenes media stuff, I was really, appreciating the episode.
I really appreciate that. I mean, I can't imagine you being an Asian person, what that was like to be on the other side of that when it all went down. So
I do remember that. Yeah, I'm like things. Yeah, like it. You can see why it had such an effect, and like people ended up getting fired. There was an accountability that feels like, I don't know if that exists in 2024 traditional media, just I don't know, 8 years later ish.
Yeah.
It's interesting to know that whole station suffered to the point of like, it seems like it might have been a major reason why Fox ended up jettisoning it in favor of doing what Fox does, which is they have all these affiliates that kind of report the same news.
Yeah. Yep. And Sinclair as well. It's a terrible time for TV news. And I actually wanted to ask, because of the update in the Banco Brown case. Now, you wrote a fantastic piece for The Nation that I highly recommend to all of our listeners about Banco Brown, and really the bits about the case and their killing that aren't in the media, that aren't being highlighted by the media. And now that California Attorney General Rob Bonta has said he won't pursue charges against the security guard, how are you feeling right now?
I mean, I think it's a bummer. I don't think it's like a huge surprise that there was, after Banco was killed at this Walgreens downtown a little over a year ago by a security guard, as you mentioned, there was a huge outpouring of support from people who saw how messed up this was. And also that locally, the conservative DA, Brooke Jenkins, who was new-ish to the job, didn't seem to be like that concerned. And so like day after day for a couple months after he was killed in April 2023. There were protests outside courts, outside Brooke Jenkins' office. And as a result, that's what led to the board of supervisors requesting that the tape be released. And then after that was released, of course, there was like a whole new round of people who were pissed off, rightly so. It seems like what they did is they kind of like punted it to the state, hoping that the public would forget about it a bit. Yeah, I mean, it sucks. I feel like it's gonna happen again.
Yeah, and we can't hold our law enforcement officers accountable for anything, right?
Right.
You can't set a precedent like that.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's so rare that people get any kind of like justice when it comes to particularly Black people, trans people, of which Benko was at the intersection.
And unhoused too for 10 years, like of their 24 years. That's insane.
Yeah.
But I highly recommend for anyone who doesn't know much about the story to read Toshio's piece in The Nation. It's fantastic. And that brings me to my next question. How did you get into journalism?
Journalism is something that I've always been interested in, like the media, how narratives work, how people communicate, what is happening in our lives. Yeah, it's always fascinated me. And I think my mom had wanted to be a journalist for a minute. I don't know if that influenced me. She was doing this like in the 70s. She was accepted into the UCLA J school, and then did like a short shadowing of an editor at the LA Times, who told her, and the other person that she was there with, and they're both women, he was like, yeah, you're a woman and you're Asian. This isn't really going to work out. So then she dropped out and she went to nursing school as a result. But I don't know, like how people try to make sense of the world is something that I think particularly has always interested me.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, for me, I was always like a zine writer. Like I was
Cool.
really into music, and so I wrote a lot for a lot of zines.
Nice.
And then when I was in college, I thought I was going to be an electrical engineer, and I was
obsessed with Punk Planet, Maximum Rock and Roll. By the way,
yeah.
I had like a column in some zine called Chain Reaction back in the day. In any case, yeah, I was like from a young person. Compared to the zine culture.
Yeah, that was my wife too. She had her own zine called Spider Stomping. That's really fun if you ever see it around. And then she would also write the zine reviews for Maximum Rock and Roll. Well, I was in the middle of Eastern Washington. I was in the middle of nowhere, but then I just realized I liked writing, and then it was like literally when it hit me at the end of my freshman year, like clouds parted, angels sang, "You could be a journalist," and I went full hog for it.
Hey, yeah, I feel like the zine to journalist pipeline. I wonder if that's like more of a thing than I even know.
Oh, I bet so. Especially when alternative weeklies were still in their prime, for sure.
Yeah. That was one of the first places, or SF Weekly, Bay Guardian gave me some of my first bylines in the Bay.
And so many other great journalists came from that too. What a great platform to kind of kick off writers.
Yeah, for sure. And 48 Hills, I mean, they locally are up there with, covering the stuff that I personally feel like, needs to get covered more.
Yeah. Tim Redman, he's an institution.
Came out of, Guardian.
Yeah. And Well, yeah. So how it seems like in your career, you've mostly written for left-leaning publications. How has that been? How has that experience been?
Yeah, I mean, I think it only makes sense because I think growing up, there was a sense for me that like a lot of these traditional news sources were not reflecting what I felt was the truth on different topics, and so I feel like it was natural that I gravitated towards places like Truth Out or The Nation, and certainly, yeah, coming from Punk Planet, Maximum Rock and Roll, that wasn't like a huge leap.
Yeah, and I love how it's been able to pay your bills too.
Somewhat, yeah. Not really, not at all.
How sad.
The only time that so I know you had full time at KTVU for a while, and then KQED you mentioned. Yeah, the only time that so I've had writing jobs, but not ones that I would consider like journalisty.
Mm.
The one time that I was able to pay my bills with journalism proper, well, grants. There are still like journalism grants out there for people who are interested in pursuing stories. A lot of times it feels like you are spending so much time writing the grant proposal that like where is the time left to actually report the story?
Yeah, totally.
But when Al Jazeera America existed, they had an office in San Francisco for a minute.
Yep.
And so basically you had the oil barons of Qatar, which like for people who don't know, like they are able to fund a lot of the journalism that comes out of Al Jazeera. In any case, they were moving into the US for a minute.
AJ Plus.
Yeah. And they let us write about things that weren't being covered by traditional media here. And they paid well for freelance pieces. So that was what, like 2017, 16.
Yeah.
So that was the last time where I was like, oh, journalism really like fully pays the bills. Otherwise, it's always been subsidized by side hustles of some sort.
Mm-hmm. More of a passion, which is how they get you, how they exploit you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So I remember, another episode that I highly recommend our listeners to check out is Toshio's interview with Dylan Rodriguez, especially this last one where he talks about his piece about AAPI organizations and how they're basically working with the ADL and kind of helping the Zionist project. And you guys talked about how Truth Out changed his article. And I believe you even mentioned that you had a similar experience with one of your publications. Did I hear that right? And would you be able to get more into it?
Yeah, I actually, there's like a whole other, this is like, as I mentioned earlier, like behind the scenes media stuff has always been super interesting to me. So there's another episode that we did with Tiana Reed from the National Writers Union Freelance Solidarity Project, of which I'm a member. And they just put out this report about the kind of censorship that happens in traditional media around the topic of Palestine and genocide in Palestine. They also reported on self-censorship, which I thought was interesting. Self-censorship on the side of journalists who kind of presume that if they go to certain editors, they're just not gonna go for a story that humanizes Palestinians or is critical of the US's role in the budget of Israel or what have you. So with that particular episode, Dylan goes into how the not only are people from the ADL, which is this kind of right-wing Zionist organization that have board members at the Asian American Foundation, which is this big nonprofit that came out of the anti-Asian hate movement a few years back. You know, it seems like a very conscious decision for the ADL to get tied in to sort of, what's the word? I mean, some people have called it yellow washing, like kind of hide behind the fact that they're maybe doing good things in helping these Asian organizations, maybe, but then by extension, do these Zionist organizations look good? And that's the argument that Dylan was making, and I think it's absolutely agree with that argument. Don't know if I answered your question.
But Maura, what was your experience with your story that was changed?
Yeah, so basically, had submitted a story about pinkwashing, which is a similar to yellow washing, except for it's kind of like Israel's attempt to use queer and trans issues to hide behind, sort of to make its own policies against Palestinians more palatable, I suppose. And so in a couple cases, like I had stories get, like I pitched stories to these editors, accepted them, got all the way up to like, I wrote them. There were rounds of edits that go back between, you know, you as the person who's reporting the story and the editors. And then it's, in a couple cases, like the story comes back and the editor's like, we can't really run this, but because you signed a contract saying that we would pay you to report out the story, we will pay you a kill fee, which I don't know how common this is anymore, given the, you know, ever deteriorating states of journalism. But at the time, this is maybe like 8 years back. I was offered the equivalent of what they would have paid for the story. Just they weren't going to run the story, even though it had gotten, you know, read by a couple editors, passed back and forth. It was in, you know, its final form. But so I mean, they allowed me to, you know, take it elsewhere. But as you know, with news, like things change, like the stories might be less newsworthy, less timely by the time you're able to find a new publication. And publications, you know, they have their own audiences, they have their own ideas of who those audiences are and what they want. And
it's absolutely a false choice. It's absolutely they make it feel like they're doing you a favor, but no, they've killed the story.
Yeah.
No, that happened to me the last time. One of the last stories I wrote for the Chronicle got a kill fee, and it was an interview with Jello Biafra. I just wanted to do an interview, Jello Biafra, a San Francisco institution, you know, and he had things going on, and there was political things I want to talk to him about because, hey, the dude talks about politics all the time, from his songs to his spoken word. So we did an interview. It was 3 hours. It was intense. But when I turned in the piece, one of the things he discussed was the White Night riots, right? Mm-hmm. And he discussed how the cops went to a gay bar in the Castro during the White Night riots and basically beat up a bunch of the patrons. Now, I forgot which bar it is, but it is a documented event. I did not make this up. He did not make this up. But my editor, Maricar Mendoza, refused to research it. She just said, "Oh, this can't be true. I don't want to deal with this. I'm not going to put this in."
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. No, that's super interesting.
That was 1980, like or 79.
Yeah.
Like you can research that. There's plenty of people that could tell you about it. And she didn't even want to Google it.
Damn. Yeah. No, I mean, that's a hugely important event. And like things like that, like instances like that are how those events fall out of collective memory, because that interview with Jello Biafra would have been an opportunity for a lot more people to, or whoever read that interview. I'm guessing a lot of people were not familiar with the White Night Riots.
Yep.
And certainly as someone who is queer, I didn't know about that piece of history until I moved to San Francisco. I moved here in 2006, and it took a minute for me to learn some of this, I want to say local queer history, but that was a major moment. That's I would say if there wasn't censorship around that moment, the way that there is, it would be it's the kind of thing that Stonewall, White Night Riots,
Compton Cafe in San Francisco.
Yeah. I mean, these are major moments, and it takes things like it being reported on by journalists or historians. In the case of Compton's cafeteria, with there's a really good documentary by Susan Stryker, who we've had on the podcast, about the riot at Compton's cafeteria in the Tenderloin. And yeah, I mean, damn, did you ever get that interview out?
No. I mean, because
you got to release it.
Yeah, I should just post it on my own thing. I actually have I could even kind of cut up the audio or something too, but it was good, but it was also, it was a lot of anger about where the dead Kennedys were right now too. So it's more of a music thing. But gotcha. Yeah, I know it's so, there's serious heroes, queer heroes in San Francisco, not just Milk, but Cleve Jones. And it blows my mind that they actually had a mini series about Cleve Jones's life on major networks, because I don't think that would happen now. I honestly don't. And also too, the fact that he still has to work, he's worried about getting evicted from his apartment. Just terrible things. Yeah. And that actually brings up to another a question I want to ask you. You brought up, okay, first off, I just want to say that last episode of Sad Francisco, your live episode where you discuss with or the topic is trans Black Palestinians. That I cried afterwards. That episode, especially the comments at the end. I'm forgetting the name of the guest, but who was talking about having the seas and being Palestinian and just wanting
Mama Ganoush,
Mama Ganoush wanting to die in their homeland, or at least be buried there, and not knowing if that's gonna be possible. Heartbreaking. I highly recommend it to everyone listening. But I also believe Mama Ganoush talked about an interaction with Raphael Mandelman. Where Mama brings up how many relatives they've lost in Palestine, and literally Mandelman's reaction is, "Well, I'm a Zionist. I don't think anything." Just the most callous response you could have.
Yeah,
and it's and it kind of brings me to the question, because when you look at the Soups and Scott Wiener, it's how many is there just way more gay Republicans in San Francisco than I know of? Or honestly, do you think there's some kind of purpose behind who these politicians being put into these positions?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that mentioning how my mom, as Asian American woman, had trouble getting into journalism back in the day. There's a problem that we have in San Francisco where identity and representation end up being like a stand-in for diversity of viewpoints. So you can still have, an Asian person who identifies as queer who, doesn't reflect a viewpoint that's any different than whatever the current, top of the power structure looks like. And so on the board of supervisors, as you mentioned, like we have three gay guys, Dorsey, Mandelman, and Guardio, and they're the most conservative of the supervisors, I believe. And likewise, yeah, in local news, people like Betty Yu, Yan Lim from TV News are
Henry Lee.
Henry Lee, yeah, they're pretty expert at. I think. They use the fact that they are a particular identity to do nefarious things or report stories that in a way that I think it is easier for audiences to, I suppose, like take as truth coming from them because they are part of a group of like they're Asians who, people identify them as maybe having been marginalized in the past. Why would they lie about these, the extent of, for example, like the theft at Walgreens, like being like more of an issue than, it actually is, which, I would argue like the wage theft of a Walgreens is, like a bigger problem than any theft, any like classic theft of candy or what have you at a Walgreens. But and that's like something that I am personally interested in is why San Francisco is like this neoliberal innovation capital that exports like a lot of policies and people. It's a kind of incubator. It's like we test, startups have incubators in the tech industry here, as people know. And I think it's also an incubator for a lot of conservative policies because by and large, the people, like everyday people who live here, I think tend to be more progressive and tend to be more open-minded, but that's not reflected necessarily in local politics or traditional news media. And at the same time, because of identity politics, I do find like as someone who's Asian, as someone who's queer, it's easier, I suppose, for me to go after somebody like Dion Lim or go after somebody like a Scott Wiener, the state senator who's like, all kinds of conservative, but happens to be, like the top gay politician in the legislature in California. Or assembly, legislature?
Yeah, assembly.
Yeah, thank you.
State senator. Sorry, you're right. State senator.
So that is something that I'm interested in continuing to report on. Like, and it's also just something that I notice a lot being Asian and queer. when you have people out there who are sort of betraying
Yeah.
what you know to be as like sort of weaponizing their own perceived marginalization in the service of things like white supremacy or like
The carceral state.
correct. Yeah. For example.
I know. I was at K-Pix during the Chesa Boudin recall. And I mean, I had to sit there and read all of Betty Yu's reports, and it just bugged the living crap out of me. I mean, it was so clear the viewpoint, the narrative that she was pushing. She was not doing straight reports. There's absolutely a narrative. And just like with Heather Knight or now Emily Hoven, top billing for anything, clearly giving that narrative the all the push they can.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Fully agree. No notes.
Yeah. But at least you're trying to, what's the phrase? Like, come and getting your folks,
Yeah, I mean, that's needs to happen on that it just needs to happen.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, you bring up Wiener, and one thing I really love about your coverage, and especially like your TikToks and stuff, is your focus on YIMBYs and the disaster that their policies, have given us. I mean, it's so ridiculous, this false narrative that there's not enough housing, even though there's so much housing, they just don't want to lower rents.
Right.
And you were early in. I think I even learned about YIMBYs from your piece in these times. And I believe that even came out around the same time that the YIMBY manifesto was published, which if you haven't read it yet, please do, folks. It's where the avocado emoji came up being associated with YIMBYs, but it also it really shows their whole ass.
Yeah. Know your enemy. Know your enemy.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting that they would put a document out like that, and of course it's going to get passed around. And I think that there is some, like, among some of these people who, I think a lot of them are probably, they would fall under like libertarians, libertarianism. They want sort of
business to solve everything,
but then also like sort of like socialism for corporations, but not,
housing subsidies, not public housing.
Correct. Yeah. So, I mean, I think some of them do drink the Kool-Aid and believe it to the point where they're cool, like making these documents public. But yeah, I think it's important that people do continue to say that, the same things over and over in new and interesting creative ways, to hammer home that these people are stumping for the real estate industry. And that's not happening enough.
Yeah, and they're already in our governments too. You mentioned Wiener. We also have Erwin. I'm in Berkeley, and there's a lot of them on the city council. Reishi, she's the only thing she talks about, like the only thing she can be proud about, is a building being built in Berkeley, which is like, Jesus Christ, come on, there's so much more. Can't take a side on the ceasefire, but hey, let's all celebrate a new building. But I wanted to know, you were so early in. How did you come across the YIMBYs? What made you want to start reporting on them?
I guess some like activism that I had done with Gay Shame, which is a local direct action group that anti-gentrification work has been one of their like the main issues that we've organized around for a long time. And there's this person within the YIMBY royalty, I suppose, this person from Philadelphia, Sonia Traus, who was running for local supervisor in San Francisco, actually, of the area where I live. I live in the Tenderloin. And fortunately, she did not achieve her goal. But yeah, at the time, I think because we were organizing against her, and she had just started in 2014 this group called SF Yimby, and we were sort of learning about how this astroturfing group worked, where they were like basically, again, something for the real estate industry, but appearing to be of the people because, it was a smart idea. Like in San Francisco, like I think it's a generalization, but people, appreciate grassroots activism, not coming from the top. But she got pretty far on this faux grassroots astroturfing vibe.
Yeah, God, yeah. She's so awful too. Like, especially just being anti everything. And there's some comments she makes about immigrants and comparing what was it like some of the housing activists to Trump supporters. It's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah. And she had no remorse. That was the worst part. Well, you guys were saying we're Trump supporters, so I had to say it back. It's like,
yeah, no, it's an interesting like case in like how really privileged people can't who have never been told no in their lives. As soon as they get any pushback, how the self-victimization, they almost make this, like the victim identity that they glom onto. It's their whole world.
Yeah, dude, they just lash out. It's crazy. I mean, especially, man, do not get in an argument with a Yimby online. You will be lost. You will lose hours.
Do not waste your time. I mean, I appreciate, I know that, I appreciate people like Kate Willett, who I had a chance to talk to, who lived in San Francisco for a while and is a comedian who is willing to go there. But for me, I just need to turn off the comments.
Yeah, me too. I just learned to block. I'll learn to say something snarky and get out. But I did get Max Dubler, who is some kind of higher up in California Yimby, to admit he makes $90,000 a year from being California Yimby.
Not too bad.
Yeah, exactly. AstroTurf definitely pays, and now we know.
Yeah. For sure.
Exactly.
Hello, everyone. This is Tofu, co-producer of San Francisco, here to talk about how you can support the show. If you have the extra funds, you can visit our Patreon page, patreon.com/San Francisco. There you'll find all of our past episodes, transcripts, and frequent community posts. Our paid members who are on the $5 subscriber tier will have early access to episodes a couple days before they go live on other platforms, as well as get their name shouted out in the intro of our episodes. Paid members on the $1 supporter tier will have their name featured on the end card of our YouTube videos and on our Instagram every month alongside our $5 subscribers. Go ahead and follow us on our TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube channel to get updates on the show, additional content, or to just interact with us. Lastly, if you're listening on audio platforms like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, go ahead and give us a rating. It really helps us out. Okay, not so shameless plug is done. And now back to the episode.
I guess actually, I should have asked this earlier, but starting San Francisco, what was the motivations, and how did your relationship with Tofu start?
So second question, Tofu. I like needed somebody. Well, first of all, like I think there's something about like zines where it can be a little bit more solitary, but like the podcast medium, I don't know, like maybe it was just me. I was like, it would feel good to, work on this project with somebody else who is local. And so I put up an ad. I was specifically looking for someone who had some like more audio expertise. And they fit the bill. And so they live in San Jose now, but I don't know, like I'm interested in covering outside of just San Francisco, since I spend time in East Bay, mostly not spending too much time on the peninsula, but that was just putting out an ad and finding somebody who was interested in the medium of podcasting and short form videos, and also like sort of, like was, or not sort of, but like was pretty aligned, I think, with me as far as like point of view. And that was a big part of it. And starting Sad Francisco, that happened like 2.5 years ago. I feel like I was late to the game. Like we were both so late.
Yeah, I know.
We like everybody started these podcasts like beginning of COVID, and had all of this time to like work on technique and like figure out what worked and get guests who had nothing else going on in their lives, so they were able to come on and take part in podcast episodes. But in any case, eventually got around to it. Had seen, like, we talked about the time of 2,000 word articles feels like right now that is not the medium that necessarily that a lot of people want to get their information through. And podcasting, had just like been listening to podcasts for a while, and it's a really cheap way to make media and get it out to a lot of people.
Yeah, totally. I mean, especially for me, it was just also I can't stand back and watch this stuff continue to happen. I mean, It was bad enough with the recalls. I mean, you could see the train wreck coming with Boudin and the school board. Mm-hmm. I mean, and it was so shocking, but it was also so insidious. I mean, it was just watching money just bully its way and just undo democracy. And before even KTVU, even these stations would give you a better objective report, And I know a lot of people are like, objectivity doesn't exist. You could still effort. You could still try, you could just focus on the truth. And that's what I saw was happening. And it's just, it kills me. This used to be a field that I almost saw as like a community service. I mean, it really is. Like, sure, it has to make money, but it's still at the heart of it, a community service. And hedge funds have undid all that. Murdoch and hedge funds have killed all that.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of other countries, you have state-funded news that, like, I think, we do have like PBS and NPR to a certain extent, but it's still like, it's like a pittance compared to what you have with like CBC in Canada or
and BBC
and Britain. Of course, there are issues with that because then, like what are they not reporting on by having so much funding tied up directly to the government, and whoever happens to be running that government at any given time. But that said, they do have more of an infrastructure to make news. And I mean, I would be interested to hear, like where you think we are headed, because I feel like, I think a lot of people that I've talked to, freelancers, like feel like don't have a clue, and I'm just like, sometimes it feels like I'm like just grasping in the dark.
That's a great question, because I do think we're going to see the death of legacy media. I think we are going to see a lot of what we thought were trustworthy institutions really lose that. People are just gonna know it's BS. Like already, like the only reason you would listen or believe anything on Fox News is if you liked that side. If you you wanted to hear these things. My mother, she watched Fox News 6 to 8 hours a day. I'm not joking.
Yeah.
She had 5 TVs in her house. Every one of them, if you turned it on, it would be on Fox News. And that was hard as a journalist to sit back and watch that.
Sure.
But she would be like, "That's not true," like yelling at it.
Yeah,
She would just be
yeah.
like, "I just want another perspective." There's always an excuse. There's always something. So, but I do think things will pop up. I think we're kind of almost like a sign of that. I think we're kind of the COVID and the wastewater. I think you're saying if we're popping up like this, like the Eye of Stone back in the day, why depend on a media? I'm just gonna do the DIY, do it all myself, and get subscriptions. And I think you're gonna see a lot more of that, especially because of the being able to do that thanks to the internet. And I think those will grow, especially because I think the younger generations, especially through the Israeli genocide going on right now, or the Palestinian genocide, I should say, Israel is the one that's perpetrating it. I think you're going to see a lot of people see through the BS, and they're going to be the future of news audiences, where people will know. I mean, also you also have things like ground news, which is a great idea, which is basically with every story that's happening, you can also see what publications are covering it, like what narratives are being pushed at it. I think you're going to see a lot of that too, where you can almost rate the where it is on a spectrum, and I think that'll get people into it. But then at that same time too, I think the idea of objective journalism, which I still have hope for. I don't know why. I think just reporting the truth, I think still has a lot of use. But I do think when it comes to bigger stories, I do think when it's, the features, the profiles, when it's something about a bigger thing happening, I think you're going to see more of those on spectrums, and you're going to see a lot more. Like, did you see the Pirate Wires piece, the hit piece on the defund the police movement in Oakland?
No.
Oh yeah. I mean, the writer already kind of taking the tactics of the left even more hardcore with investigative hit pieces. I mean, it's bad. It's bad. They went after the anti-police terror project, which is fuck you. They're amazing. I don't know. They're actually trying to do the right thing, and they know what's going on, and they know why we need to defund police. And you're already getting pushed back by that. And you'll probably find that, guess what? They probably wrote that piece because they got funding from the police unions.
Could be. Yeah. I mean, I know that's like such, I do wish we had a clearer view of, where people are getting the money so that we can make like more informed decisions about what we consume.
Oh my God. I honestly hope somebody passes a bill that, requires news publications to provide their funding,
That'd be great.
I mean, it has to happen. But I did want to ask you, we've been talking about kind of a lot of sad stuff that's going on, there's a lot of reasons to be hopeless right now, but I honestly think there are good reasons to have hope and to keep fighting. What is that for you, especially in terms of San Francisco, your home?
I mean, lately I have been inspired by the like anti-genocide work that is not only gonna mean more people are educated on what's happening in so-called Israel, and also like what's happening with the U.S. government and how we fund wars that are all over the world. I think it's also a moment where like people are coming together, they're learning skills that they didn't know before. So like, in addition to ending the genocide, like we can and some of the other genocides that are going on. I think it's only gonna mean like more of it's gonna strengthen so many people's sort of skills around organizing this moment. I have been inspired by what I've seen around that, and yeah, just it feels like with traditional media, like with a lot of the critiques around traditional media, like sort of bubbling up to the point where, like you said, I think it was like I read like less than 5% of Gen Z media consumers are getting their news from traditional news sources. We're just gonna have like more of a critical news consuming public. I want to say.
Okay. Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah. I know. I think yeah, that's all because honestly what built up these reputations was the desire for objectivity and was the, I mean, I went to J school and reporting the real truth was drilled into us. But then I also was going to J school when basically J schools were ending. Like my program, my undergrad program, that was the last year. It got wrapped up in the speech communication school, and like, I mean, you still go get your master's. I went to Cal and got my master's in journalism, but I don't think many people want to take on that kind of money, take on that kind of debt.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
But hopefully, good journalists are still going to be coming out too that know how to report and write. I mean, I'm still seeing them. Left Coast was a Left Coast Right Watch, I think, is a great publication to be following, and so many other of the kind of more legacy leftist stuff. Though apparently you got to watch out though because they might be censoring your articles.
Right.
Well, and one last quick question: do you think Peskin will win mayor? Who do you think is going to win mayor?
I mean, I would just like to see Breed fall. I do think, like, regardless of who it is, I'm gonna have problems with them. It's a reason why, like, it kind of undergirds like why, for the purposes of San Francisco, it doesn't make sense. Like, I don't want to have politicians on San Francisco. I feel like there's too much squirrely stuff that can happen post the interview that makes you wish you never gave that person a platform. But I do think if Breed lost, it would be easier to organize against whatever horrible things the next administration would have cooked up in City Hall. I think that, as we were talking about earlier, someone like Breed is able to sort of manipulate a lot of people who aren't, like, to be honest, like, most people don't have a lot of space in their brain for what's going on at City Hall. And I think has been able to, like, weaponize the fact that she is from like a marginalized community. Her narrative about growing up in Western Addition, the fact that she's Black and Black woman. I just think it would be easier to organize someone who wasn't so adept, I guess, at. I mean, we've seen it. Like, she will cut someone off if they're critical of her, and it could be about anything, and she'll be like, no, not to me as a marginalized person. And I think that there's something, like, deeply San Francisco about that is able to work like that. That makes me love and hate San Francisco.
Yeah. Like, there's still good intentions there, but then they kind of they kind of muddy the water, right? And
Right. Right. When you only have like so much time in your day to think about local politics, and you see
or you don't want to think about this stuff because it depresses you.
For sure. Well, this is just one more reason that it would depress you, I think. Yeah, like the sort of cynical way in which she like wields those identities, even though, I mean, what is she doing for Black people out in San Francisco? She is making the city more unaffordable. She has done nothing to make sure that people can afford to stay here as far as housing goes.
Yep, cutting youth programs to pay for her panda cage.
Right. She's sitting on affordable housing money that she won't spend for some reason.
Yeah.
She's funding the cops. We know that like the arrest rates, for example, of who ends up in jail in San Francisco, like Black people bear like an outsized amount of the police violence in the city as well. And she doesn't seem to care.
Yeah.
So I do think that for her to be ousted, and it seems like possible. It's wild to think that she has been at City Hall for what, like 15 years?
Yeah.
Like including her time as a supervisor. She gotta go.
Yeah, she's such a bummer. Yeah, it's true though. If she loses and if Trevor Chandler loses, I'll have reasons to celebrate for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Man, because to me too, he's truly like the Trojan horse of evil, like pinkwashing APAC. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, pinkwashing APAC. Like, I don't know, education washing or washing, teacher washing.
Oh God.
How he got his license, like as he was putting his application to run for supervisor, which would preclude him from really having time to teach. It's so.
And
it's
a substitute, just a substitute too.
Yeah. It's so transparent to us, but again, like not everyone has time to like follow these little melodramas that are happening every day around City Hall. So it makes you super cynical about politics, but at the same time, I can't shut up about the stuff either.
Yeah, we still got to do something, which is all the reason in the world people need to listen to Sad Francisco and get all the news that's
and Doomloop Dispatch.
And thank you for listening to us for sure. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me, Toshio. I wish you all the best this week and stay healthy, unlike me.
Yeah. No, for sure. Hope you heal soon. And let's do this again.
Awesome. Sounds like a plan. Till next time.
Thank you for listening to Sad Francisco. I am Toshio Meronek, and my co-producer is Tofu Estolas. Patreon.com/Sad Francisco is where you can find our past episodes and transcripts, and it's also where you can help us out with a donation. And if you do, it comes with some benefits like getting the episodes a few days early, and our gratitude for allowing us to keep making this podcast, which we love to do. See you next time in Sad Francisco.